Well, thank you very much, first of all, and welcome everybody for staying up till now, so late to hear what I have to say. Um, what we would do now is I would just give you a brief idea about what I do and the organization that I work for, and how this presentation is organized today, and the journey kind of I will guide you through for the next 20 minutes, half an hour. So I work with technology and human rights. I work as the project coordinator for online communities and e-activism at Amnesty International, and we happen to be the largest human rights organization in the world. My work relates to the fact that the countries where Amnesty International is not present, we work through internet to build up communities in countries where there are no offices of Amnesty International. So countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, a lot of European countries, including Lithuania. So that is what I try to do in my role. And as far as my organization is concerned, we are into a lot of rights-related issues. To be more specific about Lithuania, we had been working for the last few years, and particularly focusing on Lithuania, also on Estonia and Latvia, on the homophobic issues that are persistent in the country. So, well, unfortunately, there are a lot of other pressing issues in Lithuania with which Amnesty International maybe would have loved to get associated, but as a starter, this is what the team of researchers and campaigners are working on, focusing on Lithuania. Just going back a little bit from where I come from, in some of my previous jobs, I worked as an IT consultant in a development agency where my job was to find out how internet and mobile phones are used by farmers and small businesses in rural Bangladesh and in India. So I traveled to villages in Bangladesh and saw farmers just wearing something there, bare-chested. At least they have a mobile phone in their hands. And my job was to find out their behavior with the mobile phone. They knew the red button to reject calls and the green button to accept calls. What do they do with the mobile? How do they want to use mobile phones for their agricultural purposes, their livestock, poultry, fishery? So that is from where I get all this inspiration that whatever we are trying to do with internet and social change, you have to keep the lowest common denominator in your mind. I mean, a farmer, he could be semi-literate or illiterate, but suddenly he's empowered with a mobile phone in his hand. And we were supposed to find out, what does he use that mobile phone for? For sending SMS? For just making long chats with his neighbor, with his mates? Or he wants to use his mobile phone to know more about agriculture, about the latest pesticides that are in the market, about the market information, market price for his crops. So that is where technology starts playing a role in social change. As long as it brings tangible benefits in your lifestyle, in your livelihood, that is when you know that technology is making a difference. It is beyond poking your friends in Facebook. It is beyond SMSing your friends through your mobile phone. The reach of technology could be widespread, but it starts from ground up. So that's where all the inspirations come from. Coming back to Amnesty's work again, moving away from Lithuania, we had been experimenting quite a lot with user-generated content pretty lately. So what we are trying to do now is to see that what are people's issues, open up our platforms, internet, to people, their rights, their issues, and let's see what do they have to say. One of the things that we realized when we work with people for their human rights related issues is that there is an assumption, there was an assumption that people whose human rights are violated, they do not have any voices. But that's not true. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has a voice, but it just needs to be amplified in the right direction, at the right time, through the right channels, but more importantly, to the right people. If you have issues in the society, say in Lithuania, you might set up a Facebook page. Nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about that page even in Latvia, even in Estonia. So whatever we are trying to do through technology for social change, you need to keep in mind how other people from other parts of the world who are similarly concerned about that issue get to know about it. So for this, we had set up a microsite nearly 2 years ago for one of our campaigns called Demand Dignity. That was a campaign on human rights and poverty. So what we were claiming is that you cannot eradicate poverty if you do not address human rights first, and vice versa, that all human rights efforts should take poverty as the main violation of human rights. Poverty is the worst form of any human rights violation that can take place. So what we wanted to do now, that rather than Amnesty doing all the speaking, rather than governments doing all the speaking and NGOs doing all the speaking, we wanted people's views and voices to come up. So we came up with this microsite nearly 2 years ago. It's still in a kind of a testing phase at demanddignity.org. So what essentially it does, it gathers user-generated content in the form of tweets, in the form of SMS messages, in the form of YouTube videos, in any language. So it's not only in English, it's not only in French or Spanish, the content is in any language. Of course, that poses certain challenges in terms of moderation, in terms of a lot of issues, but that's the core of it. I remember one instance when we were working with this website, there was this lady from Jordan who used the photo of her passport as her profile picture. And she was constantly adding her voice to this website, trying to draw our attention, the world's attention, to the fact that children who were born out of non-Jordanian parents were denied the Jordanian nationality because that she was a woman in Jordan. And she thought that this is unfair, this is discriminatory to Jordanian women, that the father was non-Jordanian, so the child was denied the nationality of Jordan. So that's how people, we just came up with a website, but people, they started adding their voices to this website with issues that mattered to them most. It's nothing that Amnesty asked that lady to do, but they picked it up and they started drawing our attention, the world's attention, that this is unfair. You need to do something about this. This cannot go on. It's really unfortunate that social media, social networks raise a lot of expectations from social agencies. And it's not always the case that we can live up with all these. So it's a fact of life. We are trying, but there is much more to be done with all these issues. And also, more importantly, I talk about a missing loop. So it's very easy to come up with websites and having people's views and voices appear in a website. So it's like from offline, you go online. So you see what people from Kenya have to say, from Lithuania have to say by sitting in your couch in Los Angeles. But what doesn't happen is the offline to online loop. That is exactly where we're missing the point. That when we are going with our loud and very big promises to countries, poor countries in Africa or in Asia, that we have an internet, we have SMS, we have mobile phone, tell us what you want to do for yourselves, tell us how you want to change your society. So we show them hope. They participate, they take part in our interventions. We gather a lot of people's views and voices from all these countries, then nothing happens, basically. I mean, either they just gather dust, they're just another user-generated content there, but we still don't know how to close that loop, that people's views and voices are coming from offline to internet. Now, they need to go back to traditional media like radios, newspapers in Kenyan villages where there is no internet. How do you make sure that people's views which are gathered in the internet go back to traditional media like TV, like radio, like plain newspapers, that this is what the world's people have said about an issue in Lithuania. It was gathered on this website, and this is what the result of that is. You do not want a poor people to go to internet to find out what's their fate. You want the information to be provided to them in their local context. If it's still a newspaper, I'm sorry, you still have to provide it in the newspaper. You do not try to revolutionize a poor man's newspaper just for the sake of it. So that's just some of our views that we had. Then moving from demanddignity.org, well, I'm not a human rights researcher, I'm not a campaigner, but I work with researchers to find out how they could use internet, they could use mobile phones or traditional media for campaigning, for bringing about social change in any countries. Now, there might be some of you in the audience who might be activists, like real activists. You're associated with any social cause. The question that we asked was, how is it for you to work for human rights or for any social change in Lithuania? If you're a social worker and you are a techie, you love technology, and you're just beaming with hope and aspirations that what you can do for Lithuania, what does it feel like doing all this for you? Is it like a full-time job? Is it boring? Or is it really good and you feel like as if you're writing a poem? So you feel that joy of creativity, that joy of doing something for the society. Or is it kind of running through mountains? You feel adventurous, you're going from one issue to another. You're dealing with unemployment in Lithuania today, then poverty, to the respect to old people tomorrow. How do you feel like it? Is it like running through a mountain? We're just thinking about those metaphors. The closest we could get was to the fact that working for social change and working for human rights through technology is pretty much like a journey for an activist which never ends. Pretty much like a journey, you start from one city to another, you go from that city to another. So in social change, you go from one experience to another experience, from that experience to another experience. You meet new people, you face difficulties sometimes, you meet success, and that's how it goes. So we came up with this, again, another project like demanddignity.org, which is still work in progress, which attempts to visualize your work for human rights, your work for social change in the form of a journey, your journey, which we called the rights journey. So it's nothing but a digital representation of your work. So today you show your support for people in Egypt. Tomorrow you show your support for mothers dying in Nicaragua. So that is how you make your mental journey for your social cause. It's not only confined in Lithuania, it could be expanded all around the world. As a human being, you want to use the power of internet to show your solidarity to your peers in other countries. So that is what Rights Journey is supposed to do with the help of a map, some routes. Of course, it's a journey, so you will have some suitcases. And as an activist, the act of when you click a button and say that I support this cause, we are trying to say that that is your tiny steps that you contribute towards this journey. So we are trying to tell the story in a completely different way. That is how it is. Now, what happens in this rights journey, another experience that came up to our mind was, I don't know how many of you are members of various international organizations like Oxfam. Are there anybody members of Oxfam, Greenpeace, Avaz, Amnesty itself, or any Lithuanian NGO? You know, what happens here? You keep bombarded with all these calls to action, these appeals to action. Do this, do that, stop this person, stop that person, donate money. You know, all these are like asking you to take action, and that results to something which we call the action fatigue. And you just become too tired of taking all these actions by clicking buttons, and you just don't know what change is it going to bring by just clicking buttons or clicking links and saying that I support it? So that's what results to a big action black hole, that you don't know what I'm doing through the internet for my country or for any other cause in Libya, in Egypt, or even in Japan now, that I don't know what I can do for Japan, but what can I do by clicking a button? So there's like a big action black hole. It's going everything in that black hole and you don't know what are you doing. So what we think that you should be provided an action menu, an action profile, that as an activist, as a member who is trying his or her level best to bring about social change in, say, in Lithuania, you should be able to know what exactly have you contributed to a certain cause, to a certain issue in any part of the world. Pretty much like your Facebook feeds, news feeds, so like your recent activity. So we need activists to be clear about this fact that, okay, I showed my solidarity with maternal mortality in Burkina Faso, or I supported the cause in Brazil or in Bahrain in the last 3 months. Then it would be our job to get back to you by saying that, okay, you have done these 3 things in the last 3 months. This is what we have done with your support. Why don't you do something else for us this time? That is not currently happening with technology and social change. People suddenly feel empowered that, yeah, we have a mobile phone and we have internet. And those who really want to bring about some social change, they become a little bit confused because you're not selling bananas here. You can't count your profit. How do you measure social change? It's not directly visible. So sometimes it creates a lot of frustration when you're using technology to bring about social change because it doesn't happen immediately. It takes a bit of a time and it requires some patience as well. So moving away from here, let me get back to some of the thoughts that I have that they don't represent Amnesty's view necessarily. Now I wanted to talk about microactivism and what that is all about. Now, before I do that, this picture that you are seeing in the screen is of Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who founded the Grameen Bank and who is the founder of microcredit. And himself and his organization was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for microcredit. So what microcredit does, it gives very tiny amounts of loan to very poor people. Majority of them are women. It started in Bangladesh. They give them very tiny amounts of loan, $10, $20 to start with, without people who do not have any collateral. So people, if they go to a bank now, these poor people asking for loan, the bank would deny them that because they don't have any collateral, they don't have any properties. So that's why this gentleman came in with this innovative idea that, okay, you wanted to start something small, you don't have anything to prove your credit worthiness, I'll give you that loan, but it's very tiny amount, and you'll have to give it back to me after a while, so see what you do. 94% of these loan takers are women, and they've got a nearly 98% loan return rates. Because what these women did, they took the loan, they invested it in their family, they invested in their household, unlike some men who might have wasted the money with whatever. So the main thing is, so you start very small. You start very small, but you have to plan very big. If you translate this whole thing with social change, it is extremely important to act first. It might be very small. You might be asking yourself, oh, what can I do? I mean, I don't know, I'm just sending an SMS or I'm just clicking a button. But the point is, don't bother about your contribution size. But it would be a big mistake if you don't act. That is what's more important, that if you are powered with technology and you have a social issue in hand, just act. So from microcredit, I'm trying to come up with this concept of microactivism, that people who think that they're really doing something really small, but it doesn't matter. This microcredit has kind of revolutionized how the poor people do business in Bangladesh and in a lot of other countries. Similarly, it can happen with micro-activism as well. So if you're a member of this society, of this country, you certainly have some power. It doesn't have to be as big a power as your ministers or your government, but you yourself is powerful enough. So that's the whole point there. And just for some statistics, Lithuania, 65,000 square kilometers. Bangladesh, 144,000 square kilometers. Population in Lithuania, 3 million. You know what's the population in Bangladesh? 160 million. So the problem is nearly, well, 160 times. But the power is within the people itself, that, okay, if there are so many people, let them bring about the solution which would change their fate. So that's how it goes. Now, just to sum up on this point, that micro acts can lead to macro changes. That is the main issue that I'm trying to drive home here. That you start small, you do something very small, but have a very big plan. Don't think about the big plan to change the society with internet or by a Facebook page overnight. It doesn't happen like that. But you need to start. You need to start doing something. So the first point was, there is a term called slacktivists. It's a combination of two words, slacker and activist. So what is meant by slackers is people who feel good by changing their profile pictures in Facebook for World AIDS Day, maybe, or wearing bands, maybe. Well, this is for login, but wearing a band showing your solidarity for homosexuals or whatever. You change your Twitter profile, or just keep on clicking buttons. So some people call them slacktivists, that they're not truly engaged. They do not want to take the risk of going to the street and facing bullets or fighting with the police or just shouting in front of an embassy. They're safely in their house watching movie and just clicking buttons and sending SMS for a cause. They call them slacktivists. I do not. I still think that these people should be called micro-activists. Show them some respect. At least they're getting aware of this issue. At least they have the courtesy or that intention to at least click a button. Maybe they're not engaged. Maybe not all of us need to be engaged at the same level. Some of us will need to stay at home and keep blogging about an issue in Lithuania. Some of us who are not that interested about technology but very passionate about the cause in Lithuania, unfortunately, will have to go to the street to rally for that issue. And that's how you create that bridge. There are people who stay at home, do something through the internet. There are people who are on the ground, and that's how we work together. It's very unlikely that any revolution till now has taken place solely through the internet. Not until now. Now, I guess all of us are aware of what has been happening in this country lately. There has been a lot of talks in a lot of newspapers that it's a Twitter revolution, or even in Iran a couple of years ago when there was a lot of chaos in Iran. And there were claims that Twitter has brought about a revolution in Iran, and Twitter is the key to freedom of expression in Iran. Well, I don't think so. There has been records that none of these tweets were from Iran itself, because there were clampdowns. People were too busy, showing their dissent or protesting. Most of these tweets came from Iranian diaspora who used to live in the United States and in the UK. So that's not a problem, basically. I mean, I agree that you cannot tweet a revolution. You cannot tweet a revolution, but you can at least show your intent that you are not happy with something or you support a certain cause. Let me tell you one thing. Your intention as a social change agent comes way before your actual action. It comes way before your action. If you have a Twitter account, if you want to show your support to a cause, just tweet about it. If you think that's good enough, I'm happy with it. I support you. But then you can think about what other actions can you take. So your intention is extremely important than your action. So I think, yes, you cannot bring about any revolution through Twitter, but at least you can show your intent too. Moving on from here to another concept that I wanted to talk about today was related with a 999 service. You know about the emergency service in Lithuania? That's 112. What happens in real life? The 999 is in the UK. 911 is in the USA. What does this number do? It's an emergency number. For what? If you have a fire breaks out in your neighborhood, in your house, in your factory, in your office. What else? Medical emergencies. If somebody suddenly falls sick at home in the middle of nowhere, in streets, somebody needs medical attention immediately. Or there's a serious crime happening. People getting murdered, killed, theft, burglary, robbery. So these are maybe the core 3 reasons why we dial up 112 or 999. Help, help, immediately, we need it now. So that is 999, right? Now I will want you to think about this 999 situation in a social context, but we'll go there. Now think about what are those critical factors when you call 112. I hope nobody here would ever have to call 112, but just for the sake of it, speed. If I need your help now, there's a fire in my backyard, I need it now, immediately. I don't want the fire brigade to arrive after an hour when the whole thing would have been burned down to ashes. Or if somebody is dying in my lap now, and I've called 112, I want help now, immediately. So speed is extremely crucial here. What else is there? Trust. In a crisis situation, you do not have any option but to rely on the person who has come to help you, do you? When there is fire, when there is somebody dying, you don't feel well. When somebody walks your way, you don't ask for that person's ID, or you don't want him to wait until you do some background check, do you? In a crisis situation, in any society, in our lives, trust is of utmost importance. And finally, skills. Again, when you call 112, you're not feeling well. You don't want a paramedic to come to you and ask your help on how to treat you, would you? That would be disastrous. Or you have an emergency operation to do now because you are not well. You want your doctor to be well qualified, highly skilled, to get that thing out of your system so that you feel better. You don't want your doctor to get confused with all these knives and screws and like, uh-oh, where should I start from? Not in a crisis situation. So these are the key 3 things which we see pretty much in a real life 999 situation. So speed, trust, and skills. Now, if you want to translate these issues into real life context, how does it work? So this emergency in our personal lives and an emergency in the society. Think about Egypt. Think about Libya, Bahrain. These are emergencies, social emergencies. And we need some sort of a 999 support to help us get out of this way. But one key thing you need to keep in mind, is everything a social 999 situation? Like, is everything so urgent? is everything, I mean, so burning that it requires some solution right now? Maybe, maybe not. It was true in the case of Egypt that they were enough and they just wanted to like hit it now and we just want to do it now. But maybe in the case of Lithuania, maybe not. Maybe the issues that you are dealing with now, maybe it is not a 999 situation. It's not a social panic. People are not going crazy. So maybe not. So you need to pick those issues up and agree on the fact that, well, yeah, it is an issue, we need to deal with it, or no, it's still not an issue yet. So related with this, 999, social 999 was the concept of an activism dam. Now, if you look at it, it's just a dam which controls the flow of rivers, streams. What do we mean by activism dam is, we talked about these micro-activists and you're doing your tiny bits of contribution, your tiny activism for a social cause. Now that needs to build up. That needs to build up to such a tipping point that this dam floods away. This dam gets overflown. That is the activism dam, that you need to figure out a socially acceptable tipping point. So in the case of, again, going back to Egypt, their activism dam was broken like anything. So the areas which were pretty much safe before got flooded. So this is just a metaphor that I'm trying to put forward to you, that all our social complaints, our frustrations in the society against the system, against the government, against other people, will need to form an activism dam through micro-activists like you and me, powered with internet, powered with mobile phones and our laptops and computers. And with all our tiny contributions, we are nothing but very small drops in this whole flow of water. But we still are a part of it. We still are a part of this flowing water, which are going to wash away the dirtiness in our society, the bad things, the bad people as well. So that's the activism dam. And what would it do? In its way, there should be a domino effect that people, tyrant leaders, governments, or bad guys, even media, who never used to look into your issue before, they will need to get serious about it. So it's not a community issue anymore. So like a domino effect, when the activism dam will break free, it will have to hit the next button, the next button, the next button, unless the media, international media takes your issue, unless the governments take your issue, get serious about it, and try to solve it everybody together. That's what the activism dam should do. Now, who would do that? Well, these are some of my friends here. I met Nicholas, Vincentas, Daiva, and Dominicus. Some of you might be there as well, students, IT professionals here. That's where the power lies. That is exactly where the power lies. People like me can come for conferences from a different country and tell you what to do, but I can't do it for you. I cannot do it for you. These people here, they're the ones who will have to do it for you. And they do have the power. They just need to figure out what they are up to and what they want to do with it. I call it PSR. You know about CSR, the corporate social responsibility? I call this the PSR. As Lithuanians, you ask yourself, what is my PSR? Well, you're earning money, you work in a bank, you work in an IT company. Yeah, I'll become rich, I'll have families, I'll die rich, I'll die happy. That's it, life goes on. Ask yourself, with all these powers and connectedness that you have, couldn't you do something a little bit more for your country, for your society? Whatever that is, whatever. That is what I call the PSR, the personal social responsibility, and these people are the ones who can do this. So this change will need to come from within, from within Lithuania. It will never come from outside the country. It will have to come from within. Now, what these people can do, so there's this engagement ladder. It's like a commitment ladder. You can start from the bottom if you're a microactivist. You do not have to jump to the top from day one. Start very small. You're at the first step. Share a story that you like for a social cause in Lithuania. Like a button, tweet about something. But don't stop there. Climb up. If you have shared something with your friends, create maybe a Facebook page, but don't stop there. If you have got 100 people in your Facebook page and you meet online and keep posting on the Facebook page's wall, have a physical meeting somewhere in Vilnius, and then move on. So other than support, other than asking for somebody's status, can you ask for somebody's time? Can you ask for somebody's money? Can you ask for somebody's labor? So you climb up that commitment chain. So ask yourselves, where are we here with technology? You might think that with technology, oh, we will be at the top. No, you have to start very small, start from the bottom, and then we can move up. Now, going back to some other thoughts. This is Che Guevara. Now, in our society, in this world, all these revolutions that we have seen so far, in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa, all of these revolutions were related with a face who is or was our leader, who led us in the revolution. So what we did, we built statues out of them. We took their face and printed on our notes, on our coins, because they were our leaders, they are our revolutionaries. And we took their photos and hung in our office buildings, in main streets. So all our revolutions were associated with a face. But now, with internet, now with technology, this is going to change. This is certainly going to change. You cannot have one face for a revolution anymore. You cannot. While Ghonim, the Google executive who set up the Facebook page in Egypt, himself doesn't claim to be the face of Egyptian revolution. He doesn't. It's not possible anymore. I have a Facebook account, so do you. I can do exactly what you can do. We have access to the same technology. Whose face should be there when we bring about a social change in Lithuania? Your or mine? Or maybe Facebook's or Mark Zuckerberg's, but I don't know. So no more one face. It has to be countless number of faces that we have. Then, if you look at again this, talking about this crisis, this is a crowd map on the Ushahidi platform for Haiti. So think about crisis. There are two types of crisis. One is natural. Haiti, Japan, Australian floods, New Zealand earthquake. So in these natural crises, all of us seem to work really well. At least we try to. All governments, good or bad, NGOs, humanitarian organizations, relief agencies, military, people themselves, we use the technology to help people who have been battered by a tsunami or battered by an earthquake. So we use technology for a really good cause, and all of us are together. But when it comes to using the same technology against a group of people, we use it really bad. Think about WikiLeaks and the US government. Same Twitter, I'm on Twitter, you're on Twitter. Now the US government has the power to ask WikiLeaks to provide the Twitter information, account information of all those activists who use Twitter. So, if a crisis is man-made, we do not use technology in the best way. We use the same technology to corner some people somewhere in the world, and we are not affected. In Egypt again, the Egyptian government shut down the internet, and they had provided a layer in the Facebook page to tap in the password information of all the activists who were logging into the Facebook for the Egyptian cause, unless Facebook stepped in and changed it. So it's really sad that when it comes to man-made crisis, I against you, them against them, the same technology is used in a tremendously bad way. Now that is what we should keep in mind, that not everybody is our friend in Facebook or in Twitter. They could be government spies, they could be bad guys who have set up a group in Facebook, there could be people spreading rumor in Facebook or in Twitter. They can ask you to go somewhere in Vilnius and just get arrested. That's exactly what we need to be careful of in man-made situations, man-made crises here. So eventually we move on to the fact that when will Facebook become a fact book? How many of you here check your Facebook page the first thing you wake up in the morning? Can you raise your hands? Quite a few. To what extent would you allow your friends and family to control your political orientation? You don't read Wall Street Journal or you don't read Guardian anymore, but you rely on your friend to break the breaking news of the day. So how much liberty would you allow that person to shape your political orientations? So Facebook will need to become maybe a fact book, or I don't know, should it, to bring about this change. But keep in mind, it's not a magic pill. Having a Facebook page and tweeting about it will not bring about any social change anywhere in the world. The mix of technology is something more important, that depending on the local context, Facebook might not be the best means at all. There might be something else. There might be no internet, and you might have to rely on telephones or whatever. So it's not a magic pill, and you need to keep that in mind. So supporting this cause, we should not forget old media, so-called print, TV, radio. So it has to be a good mix of whatever we are trying to do through technology. I'm sure some of you must be aware of this, that in Egypt, Google set up this service when the internet was shut down, where people could call up an international number and people could leave their voices, and the voices were converted into tweets. So the service was called Speak to Tweet. But it was good, at least something is better than nothing, but I had my reservations thinking that you cannot take a revolution to Twitter only. There's no revolution taking place in Twitter, but nevertheless, something good came along the way with this service called iPadio. They are www.ipadio.com. It allows you to connect a simple mobile phone or a landline to internet. So if you're in any part of the world where there is no internet, but you have a landline phone, you can call up a number. They have 50 free phone numbers. Say what you have to say, hang up, it goes up on internet. It goes up on social networks. That is what we need to do, to connect the last mile. To connect the last mile in countries where we need to bring the social change in a more inclusive fashion. So don't be blind about internet. Think about simple telephones, landlines, and how you can connect the two. Again, to another issue. You've heard about Green Revolution in Iran. There was Jasmine Revolution in Myanmar by the Buddhist monks here. I personally think there is no point labeling technology or labeling revolutions with colors. It's very lame. What would you do when the color palette would run out? Would you call like a dark green revolution? Or a little amber colored revolution? We can do better than that. Similarly, as I said just now, there is no technology revolution. It's always led by people. Nothing is happening in Twitter. We need Twitter, we need Facebook. They will help our cause. They'll help spread our message, but they will not bring about any revolution by themselves. We should have to be at the driving seat. Then again, it is not technology-centered. Technology is not in the driving seat, but it's enabling all these change. Any revolution you take, it is location-specific. It was Tahrir Square in Egypt, Pearl Square in Bahrain, Green Square in Libya. Any change is location-specific first. People need to go somewhere, meet, gather to bring about a change. No change is brought by technology alone. It is always location-specific. Which brings me to my next question to you, is that if it's so much location-specific, can technology ever replace the need to go to the street? So I have 100,000 members in my Facebook page to bring a social change in Lithuania. So what? The government don't care. Nobody cares. These are mere numbers. But if you have 20 people showing up somewhere in the street holding placards, is that more strong? Is that stronger? Or having a lot of members in a Facebook page stronger? So I don't have any answers. These are just open questions that I'm kind of posing to you as well. Also, so we have the mouse in our hand and we are strong man. But there's something missing. Marketing guys know about the word of mouth. But what we have to do with activism, e-activism, is word of mouse. That we need to spread the word of mouse through internet for our social cause. But there's something missing here. Now, e-activism will need to become me activism first. So I need to become an activist first. And then, me activism will lead to we activism when I join you, you join her, all of us are together for a certain cause. And then, we work towards a certain issue all together. So all my Lithuanian friends who you saw in the last slide, all of us will need to work through technology towards the same thing, but all of us will need to know and to do the same thing at the same time. That is extremely important. You want something to do now, I want something to do later, the whole thing will get delayed. All of us will need to know the same thing, agree on the same thing, and do it right now together. Like this picture here, that if it's social change, it has to be done together at the same time. To sum up my issues, so it's not true that those whose rights are violated are voiceless. It just needs to be amplified. Then what is it like for you to work for human rights? I think it's like a journey. Respect for microactivists. Yes, you cannot tweet a revolution, but you can show your intentions too. And in 21st century, all the revolutions will have a countless number of faces. Facebook will need to become fact book. And it's not a magic pill, technology and social media. We need to have a balanced mix of things going on. Do not forget traditional media. Do not forget the last mile, print, TV, radio. And please do not label any revolution with colors, with Twitter, with Facebook. It's always by people, for the people, led by people. And maybe technology can still not replace the need to take on the streets, unfortunately, no matter how virtual we become. And the final thought I had was, e-activism for social change will be only meaningful if e-activism becomes me activism with my whatever mobile or whatever I have, and then it has to become we activism. Nearly wrapping up, this is Peter Drucker. He's one of my favorite management gurus. One of his questions that I really admire was, one of his quotations that was, it's not important to give right answers. It's not important to give right answers. What is more important is to ask the right questions. So, inspiring from him, this is an example of a wrong question. Okay, so you have Facebook, you love Twitter, you're doing something for your society. So how many people do you have on Facebook or Twitter? Or how many followers do you have? How many times are you married to numbers in your life? I have 10,000 followers. A right question would be that how many people are here? So if you want to bring about a social change, you have to ask that how many people you have face to face, right now, under the same roof, right here. So that is what the main issue is. That people need to be here, not in Facebook, not in Twitter. And in my opinion, true change, true social change with technology begins from here. And I would finish by just hoping and aspiring that the wind of change should continue. Acho to all of you. Thank you very much.